We have been taught that new habits can solve all our life problems. All what we have to do is to create a new habit, and as a result, new identity emerges. It seems that we have figured it all out. How they work, how we can change them, how we can control them, how we can take advantage of them. We have a 2-minute rule, a habit staking, a habit loop that consists of cue, craving, response, and a reward. We also know that our habits are driven by our identity. The stronger our identity, the stronger our habits we have created. Say there is a sudden urge to be wealthy and recognizable. If the identity doesn't consist of taking a risk, working hard, or being patient, it is almost impossible to achieve that aim. Not permanently, at least. Just some food for thought. Have you ever encountered a person or people whose new habits or identity could help them to predict what was going to happen on the following day? Could predict that they were about to lose their digital assets? Could solve a personal problem that has been recurring for the past 20 years? There is no such habit nor identity that can give us such certainty. So why we are so obsessed about them? Because what habits and identity give us is a short-term reward called dopamine. Whether we are aware of it or not, our certainty is built strictly on dopamine. No more, no less. We know how dopamine works. Scientists can track the dopamine of a craving by measuring a neurotransmitter, without which we are doomed to failure. No dopamine, no desires. Each time when we get what we had been craving for, it could be pleasure, enjoyment, but also removing doubt, fear, anxiety, stress, or lack, we receive a reward in the form of dopamine. Dopamine is also released when we are anticipating and acting that precedes receiving a reward. Imagine, for example, yourself right now on perfect vacation. Here we go, dopamine is being released. Habits are dopamine-driven feedback loop. Every behavior that is highly addicted, such as scrolling social media applications or posting a hashtag, are associated with higher levels of dopamine. When we have the right balance of dopamine, we feel happy, motivated, alert, or focused. And when we have a deficit of dopamine level, we might feel tired, unmotivated, depressed, or insecure. When people are addicted, they fulfill their desires in excess. This process generates more dopamine than is essentially required. The brain adjusts to that higher level of released dopamine and as a result produces a lower level of that neurotransmitter. Each time the users receive in excess enjoyment, any enjoyment such as being recognizable, acknowledged, desired, or even escaping a stressful confrontation, consequently the users reset the natural level of dopamine release and compromise the balance. As a result, cortisol, widely known as the stress hormone, is released, and this may affect the body, dysregulating stress response, metabolism, inflammation, blood pressure, or blood sugar. But have you ever asked yourself why pleasure doesn't last longer? Hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent to answer that question without obvious success. Why, after implementing new habits and receiving new identity, pleasure lasts only for a very short time? The amount of work, effort, and discipline the user puts into acquiring a new habit is incomparable to dopamine the user receives. When a habit stops working, meaning it's not associated with dopamine production, the users come to an inevitable conclusion that this habit has to be upgraded, so to speak. The reason why our pleasure, that is dopamine release, lasts only for a very limited period of time is because, contrary to what we know, dopamine or cortisol are not the causes, but effects. Corporations know that changing the user's identity is the key to success. All what they need to do is to create hard habits more attractive, so the users can learn to associate them with a positive experience. Imagine how strong and powerful identity of a particular society, party, or social media community is. The users very often pick up habits from the people around them. The closer they are to the user's identity, the more likely the users are going to imitate their habits. The group creates a sort of invisible pressure that lures the users in their directions. Corporations have learned that one of the best ways to change the identity is to provide the users with limited doses of certainty, meaning dopamine. And as long as the certainty works well, the users are willing to change anything about themselves. Scientists who closely cooperate with corporations have recently suggested new habits that the users should implement in order to keep the dopamine in balance. They know how important this is. If there is no dopamine, there is no desire. And when there is no desire, there is no life. So in effect, controlling others is much easier. So what are these new habits? The user, instead of fulfilling sudden craving, should wait until that desire will recede. Conclusion? When there is no consumption, dopamine is not released, and the balance is rebuilt. The user shall take any opportunity to reject that pleasure, even if it doesn't crave for it. Conclusion? Metacognitive barriers are built, which protect the user from craving. The user shall accept that after any significant success, there is going to be lack of dopamine. Conclusion? The user should get used to such state, and as mentioned earlier, not search for extra dopamine. Contrary to what we believe, these proposals are only pathways to get even greater control over people's life. The user who accepts less what is actually doing is acquiring a new desire to receive more of that less. And what do you think, who contracts that less? Corporations. I will paraphrase that. Imagine that on social media a post is displayed, which encourages the users to invest less in cryptocurrencies. There is no doubt that the users who identify strongly with this post will accept it, and as a result will not only invest less, but it's what is even more important, they are going to act as opposition against cryptocurrencies. In other words, a new habit is being created. The users are already hooked up to that dopamine they received. And if they continue doing this, one day their desires are going to be ridiculously small, and that is the main objective. Let's have a look into another case where by accepting less, the user creates even more financial difficulties. We know that crypto launchpads are mostly appointed by blockchains. If there is a project that wants to be promoted by a launchpad, but it's not associated with one of these blockchains, it is very difficult to be approved. In simple words, Crypto Launchpad's objective is to provide what the investors expect and want. But what is happening today? Tokens' retail price is lower than the price the investor paid when they were purchasing tokens from launchpads. On top of that, they cannot withdraw their tokens because mechanism called vesting, which was supposed to secure the value of tokens, played now against them. When the investors received their first return, meaning dopamine, they got hooked up. So when they decided to invest the next time, their aim was the reward. But if they hadn't accepted less, meaning they didn't desire that reward, they wouldn't have lost their digital assets. They would have made smarter choices, so to speak. The key takeaway is this. why neuroscientists, psychologists, psychiatrists, including corporations, even though they educate the users that they should take care of dopamine, they don't teach how to do it in a proper way. What we are experiencing is actually the opposite. The users are encouraged and rewarded for generating as much feelings, that kind of feelings, as often as possible. They are not aware of that their identities are being constantly altered. By the way, if you think about it, corporations' desires may differ from ours, but the reward is exactly the same, which is dopamine. So, why dopamine lasts only for a very limited time? To understand this process better, I would like to use water as an example. Water, like any other physical substance, consists of 99.99% of atoms. The remaining 1/10 of 1% is merely revealed atoms, which we call matter. So it is not water itself which we claim, but atoms that make it so that life on Earth is possible. A book, like water, encryption algorithms, data, dopamine, habits, or identity consist of 99.99% of atoms. And that 1/10 of 1%, that remaining part, is represented by the same atoms that are being revealed. The reason why we cannot put our hand through a book is not because there is paper called matter, but because revealed atoms are standing on our way. You see, we are convinced that whatever has a physical form is the one reality, such as dopamine, cortisol, encryption algorithms, NFTs, hashtags, phone applications, or crypto investments. It doesn't matter. We trust them, we desire them, we build our certainty on them, only on them. For us, there is nothing else. We totally rely on that 1/10 of 1%. So no matter what are the habits, no matter what is the identity, it is impossible for people to know what is going to happen to their digital assets. They have built their trust and certainty on something that practically does not exist. All our cravings, desires, and urges are stimulated by one algorithm. Yes, there are hundreds of millions of ways to get what we want, but there is only one primary cause, a cause of causes based on which all human cravings stem from. So, what is the algorithm? The common measure, the cause of all causes, so to speak? And believe it or not, but 8 billion of people use every day the same algorithm to get what they want. You see, that specific, unique, ultimate way we want to handle our desires, whether this is pleasure or pain, there is only one way, my way. There is no other way. Imagine 2 employees. Both of them desire to be recognized by their boss. For the first, recognition means to be publicly distinguished. For the second, to gain the boss's trust. If we switch these fulfillments, none of these employees would be fulfilled. There is only one way. Either we receive that unique reward, or it doesn't make sense. And that is the reason why pleasure lasts very short time. Because it is being limited only to one algorithm. In other words, there are no other algorithms we would agree to accept. This way and no other way. Why atoms are not limited? They can be everywhere and they can become anything, right? Because they are not stimulated by that algorithm, which you don't want to quit. Yes, we can change hundreds of habits only to keep this algorithm. And that is the paradox. So, is there another avenue by virtue of which the users can learn how not to become addicted from dopamine, yet preserve pleasure? Thanks to VAVPay application that enables the users to learn how to preserve pleasure and get control over dopamine deficit. VAVPay application seamlessly harness anti-habits or anti-identities that have been purposefully imposed into the users. Our consciousness is one of the most precious gifts we have been endowed with. It's time to take care of it and work on it. VAVPay application offers a number of NFTs. One of them is avatar called Main, a digital human whose job is to assign daily tasks which aim at finding anti-habits and anti-identities. As a matter of fact, the VAVPay application objective is to teach the users how to build certainty that is not based on external factors such as dopamine, but rather on internal strength such as our consciousness. Would you like to find out more what anti-data, anti-algorithms, we could say anti-identity, anti-habits are, and how you can actually become a part of that process, being co-owner, how to convert them? If yes, go to vavpay.io/precede. And remember that you can join us on our social media, where you can ask any question that relates to VAVPay application. And just to let you know that today's webinar is also going to be posted on our website, just in case you want to share with someone else. So I will just have a look whether there are some questions, and I will do my best to answer them. Okay, there are some questions. Renata, what you said, without dopamine there are no desires. So what I can do to control balance of the dopamine? Right. So first of all, we need to be aware, Renata, we all, that dopamine is being released not only when we create pleasure, in a sense that I enjoy something, for example, sugar, or I'm doing something that gives me pleasure, whatever that is to you. Because we generate dopamine when we escape, let's say, a stressful situation, and we don't talk about this, or whether any actually desire is being created. So what is actually happening to people right now, and how corporations are taking advantage of, is that they creating less, and they are telling us to accept less and less of whatever that is, because it's good for other people, because it's good for the society. But what we are not aware of, that behind that less is a pleasure, because each time when we receive, we receive also dopamine. So when we accept less, we want to accept even more of less. But what we are not aware of that is that we are also receiving less desire, and the lesser the desire, it's then the control is easier over that person. So we are addicting from, paradoxically, from desiring less. That is the paradox, and this is the way they don't teach us. This is the way they don't share with us. So it doesn't matter what it is, whether we are going to give a compliment to someone, or whether we are, for example, arguing with someone. In each example, we are receiving dopamine. So not only because we have something that we enjoy. Also, when we, the enjoyment can be, and the dopamine can be released when we actually are arguing with someone, or where we are taking advantage of someone. And this is something we are not being also learned. So remember that, first of all, that any pleasure, any enjoyment, and that's what we think, that when we do something, or we want to escape from something, that we don't want to confront with, when we actually do it, we also receive, the pleasure. That's also pleasure. So that's why we even working even harder to escape something that we don't want to confront with. So we are more addicted from that to work even harder. So if you look what is happening in our life, that's the way we are being kind of led by, let's say, corporations, so to speak, so that our desires are going to be lower and lower. Now, that's the first thing. Any pleasure you can think of. The second thing is the algorithm, which is even more important. Because, as I mentioned, think about it, let's say, the best idea is to give you an example, right? Imagine that your neighbor said something about you that it's not true. Now, what do you expect? Let's say you expect, just pure hypothetically, you expect to be apologized publicly, all right? And this neighbor, let's say, is bringing you a bag of, a couple of chocolates or a bag of apples. Hold on a second, you would say. That's not something I'm going to accept and feel fulfilled, right? You have your own way. It is only this way. There's no other way I could get that dopamine. I could get that fulfillment. So you see, that's the one algorithm we always use. We are not open to unlimited numbers and solutions to our life, only one way. So it doesn't matter where you live, who you are, it doesn't matter what kind of person or people we are. It doesn't matter. We use the same algorithm. And that is the case. That's the number one. That's the foundation of billions of algorithms that are created on this one. And this is why we are being taught by the corporations, but not only, to change our habits. You know why? Because we can change our habits all day long, eat better, which we should, of course. And, exercise more and don't drink, alcohol and don't smoke cigarettes. Yes, we know that stuff. And that's good. And also do different stuff. But you see, we are changing these habits. We change our identities. But the cause of causes, the algorithm, it's only one. We do all these things only to keep that algorithm better, only to feed that algorithm. That is the problem here. So you're actually asking me what can be done. I'm going to talk about this more on the next webinars. But just to begin with, these two aspects are the foundation, I would say, to remember to begin with. And by that, you create a new consciousness. All right. What are the other questions? Amanda 1989. All applications addicts. How VAVPay is different from others' application? Another amazing question. That's correct. We know that when an application is being created, it means that we want as many clients as possible and keep them as long as possible. Okay, even not on this one, we are going to change the application, but we are also the owners of the next one. So you're absolutely right. All application addicts. I agree with this. And what is the difference? You see, first of all, I just would like to let you know that as a part of being let's say as a user, you are the part of being a co-owner. So if you decide to be the investor, if you decide to be in our pre-seed stage, or if you are going to be a user, you are also a co-owner of the business. So you also would like to keep as many clients as possible, right? To make money and to share with them with other users. Nonetheless, it doesn't mean that if you are the co-owner, if you are also the user of our application, it doesn't mean that you have to use it all the time. Actually, the objective of VAVPay is to work to a certain degree, to work for certain amount of time, and then quit the application. So if you, let's say after 6 years, you are free not to use because you know what are the anti-habits, you know what is the anti, let's say, identity, anti-data, and you know how to control them, you know how to take advantage, let's say, of them in, so to speak, language, then you don't need any application to be used, not VAVPay application. So VAVPay application helps you. Yes, it is application because we need to get this way or another, and we need to use all possible ways to get to the users. But to begin with, gives you an opportunity to work on you, not to use finally that application and actually any other almost applications. That is the purpose. So yes, we use this to not to use that, okay? And so that's the way which the application works. In one sentence, to show you how not to get addicted from dopamine, but keep the pleasure. That is the ultimate, I would say also, VAF-Pay objective. All right, and is that it? One more question. Elliot, why? Can you tell a little bit more about certainty? What for you certainty means? There are two types of certainty. Certainty which is built on external factors. For example, we buy NFTs. We invest in crypto investments. We buy plots on different planets, right? On galaxies, things like that. Why? Because we want to feel that our certainty is secure. So we invest so much energy, so much, I would say, time, so much knowledge, so much life to put our certainty on these external factors, on this 1/10 of 1%. And we believe that by using that, we are secured. So this way doesn't work certainty. Because look how many people actually have made so much money, right? On cryptocurrencies, millions of people, but they lost this money, or majority of that money, major part of that amount they have lost. So that's the paradox, that we build our certainty something that cannot give us certainty, and then we are disappointed. What the other certainty is to imagine, for example, Elliot, that you have a problem or problems that you cannot solve today. Everybody has, right? And imagine that slowly, you are solving this problem, one after another. First of all, you solve one problem. How do you feel? Do you feel that you have more certainty about your life? Do you feel certain more about what is going to happen tomorrow and the day after? And then imagine that you solve another problem and another problem, and you compound solving this problem, that you can, harness and keep them under control. Are you certain? Do you have certainty? Can you imagine yourself that you have more certainty? Yes, you do. You see the difference between the certainties? One certainty is based on something that cannot provide certainty, and the other certainty it's built on not external factors, but it's built actually on your consciousness. That's the certainty VAF-Pay it's promoting. This is the reason actually why VAF-Pay application, one of many reasons, is being created. And this is actually why we encouraging you and share with you with that knowledge, so you can join, be the user, be a part of the project, be an investor as well. And of course, I'm going to talk more about this in the next live webinars. So I would like to thank you guys for your time. We truly appreciate that. It's precious. And best of all, and see you soon. Thank you.